Hello all, welcome to Abhiram IAS Academy. Let us go through the detailed chronicles of January 24, 2025. So this is the first article. It is regarding the revision of the limits for different categories of loans under Mudra Yojana. So the MSME ministry pitches for higher Mudra loan limits. So you can find this article on Business Standard. So it is relevant for your GS2 topic, government policies and interventions, and also GS3, inclusive growth, mobilization of resources, and MSME becoming the driver of growth. Let us understand about the informal sector because Mudra Yojana caters to this sector. Okay. So informal sector accounts for 50% of the gross value added in the economy, and also 90% of the workforce is engaged in informal sector. So that is the significance. And as per 2019-20 budget data, 47.64 crore people are actually engaged in this informal sector. So what is Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana? So Mudra is nothing but Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency. So it is mainly to develop and help in refinancing these micro and small enterprises. Okay. So it will support the non-corporate and non-farm small and micro enterprises in their growth. So non-farm indicates that it operates outside the agricultural sector, whereas non-corporate means they are not registered as corporates. Okay. That is, they are not under Companies Act or partnership firms, okay, like your LLPs. They can be proprietorships, okay. So that's what we mean by non-corporate. Then how does government operate this? So government doesn't directly offer loans to the enterprises. It relies on the network of member lending institutions. So what all are member lending institutions? It can be your public sector banks, private banks, or even the small finance banks and microfinance institutions, regional rural banks, and also other non-banking financial companies. So all these can be regarded as member lending institutions. So these member lending institutions will have to follow the broader policy guidelines framed by the government, okay, and the government will monitor their performance and functioning also. However, it offers some risk mitigation mechanisms for these member lending institutions because all these loans, majority of them are collateral free. Okay. So to mitigate the risk, government also offers the credit guarantee mechanisms and refinancing facility in case of any default. So that offers some cushion to these banks. Okay. And it can also help in building the reputation of the banks and achieving their priority sector lending norms. Okay. Every bank has to follow this priority sector lending norms. Okay. And if a bank achieves or overachieves its priority sector lending targets, it can have priority sector lending certificates. Okay. And then these certificates can be sold to other entities which are falling behind their target achievements. So they can help in achieving these targets also. And let us look at microfinance institutions. So micro enterprises. So these are basically some kind of household enterprises. Okay. They are individual or household based enterprises. They can be engaging in small kind of businesses or some crafts or trades. Okay. It can be a tailor, a mechanic, or a beauty parlor. All these are nothing but micro enterprises. So microfinance institutions will give loans to these enterprises. Okay. So it will also offer other financial services, like the enterprises can open a savings account in this, and also they can have insurance facilities under this microfinance institutions. Why? Because these enterprises, being small and having no documentation about their credit histories, they find it difficult to access the formal banking services. So without collateral, these institutions can obtain the loans. This will help in achieving the financial inclusion and also developing the low income groups. Okay. So these are the advantages. So what are the examples? In Bangladesh, it has been successful and it was replicated in India also from this only. So that is Grameen Bank of Bangladesh, and in India, we have Bengaluru based Equitas and Mandeshi Mahila Sahakari Bank of Maharashtra. So these can be regarded as some examples of microfinance institutions. So let us look at MSME classification, that is micro, small and medium enterprise classification. Earlier, that is prior to 2020, there was a different classification, that is based on investment alone. There was no turnover component here, but this was added later. So now it is classified based on both investment and turnover, and there is no distinction between manufacturing and services like earlier. So this is the old classification. Okay. So let us understand the Mudra scheme, that is Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency. So it was launched in 2015, we have seen, and it is to support the non-farm and non-corporate small and micro enterprises. There are 3 different categories of loans under this project, that is Shishu, Kishore and Tarun. Shishu is nothing but infant, that is indicating that the enterprise is nothing but a startup. It needs some initial funds to begin its operations, then we call it as Shishu. And Kishore is nothing but adolescent. Okay, so that means the enterprise is growing but it is still not well established. Then we have Tarun, that is nothing but a young adult. So the literal meaning is young adult. That means it is fairly well established, but still it needs funds for expansion or upgradation of its operations. So these are the 3 different categories. So for Shishu, we have up to 50,000 as the limit, and for Kishore, we have 50,000 to 5 lakh, and for Tarun, we have 5 to 10 lakh as the loan limit. So these are 3 different categories. So what are the target groups in this? We have seen it is mainly for low income groups, okay, which cannot access the formal banking. So it is your vulnerable sections, marginalized groups, some startup enterprises, okay, and even the small businesses, all these mainly to address the informal sector's credit needs. So the major aim is to address the informal sector's credit needs. So that is the main aim. So what are the achievements so far? So far, there were 37 million loans disbursed under this project. So it is 37 million loans and it is worth 3.66 trillion, okay, that is 3.66 lakh crore. This is the amount of disbursed loan amount so far, and for this year we have already achieved 42% of the target, that is around 97,000 crore, okay, through all these member lending institution, and the top performer is Union Bank, okay, even Canara Bank, and third comes SBI, and Bank of Baroda is a poor performer under this scheme. So now the Ministry of MSME is pitching for revising the loan limits of these 3 categories. Okay, so why does it want to revise the limits? Basically, the credit needs of the informal sector are not stagnant, they are growing. Okay, so to address them, and also we need to provide some flexibility for them and achieve their working capital requirements. So working capital is nothing but the capital required or the amount required for day-to-day operations of the company. So that is nothing but working capital. So to provide flexibility in this aspect and also to meet the growing credit needs of these enterprises, we want to revise the limits, and so that now these small and micro enterprises can actually expand. Okay, they can expand their business and scale them up. Okay, and also it will encourage continuous financial backing of the successful high performers. So what do you mean? Because we have introduced, instead of Tarun, we have Tarun Plus now. So this limit can be accessed by those Tarun loan recipients who have actually repaid the loans in time. So they can access this. That means we are encouraging the high performers and also those who are actually paying the loans on time. So it will provide them continuous financial backing and also encourage the successful performers. And it will also build trust in the formal credit systems. So the informal sector can obtain the formal banking services through this scheme. So it is acting as a bridge between the informal sector and the formal banking services. So we can build trust between these two sections. So what are the revised loan limits which are proposed? For Shishu, we have, instead of 50,000, the proposed limit is 5 lakhs, okay? And for Kishore, we have 10 lakhs instead of the earlier 5 lakhs. And for Tarun Plus category, we have up to 20 lakh, okay? Earlier it was 10 lakh. So these are the revised loan limits. So the scheme is not free from the challenges. It has collateral free. So there is always some level of risk of default. So, and also because of the informal nature, it is very difficult to have any kind of documents on their credit history. So it is very difficult to assess if the borrower is actually genuine or not. So these are different challenges, and even some private entities may attempt at creating fraudulent accounts, okay? So they can simply offer loan and it may be defaulted, and they can still access the refinancing facility because the scheme offers such risk mitigation platform. So that is the risk. So because there is no collateral, the banks or the member lending institutions have seen rising non-performing assets. That is nothing but the level of defaulted loan amounts are categorized as non-performing assets, and the profits of the entities are declining because of this, and banks also became overly cautious at lending, okay? So RBI also recent past has actually restricted some MFIs, that is microfinance institutions, because of violations in the pricing and lending norms, okay? They have indulged in excessive interest rates, okay? Excessive interest rates, and they are not transparent. That is, they are not disclosing the parameters like APR, that is your annual percentage rate that indicates the actual cost of borrowing. Based on this figure, we can assess the true cost of borrowing, not just the interest rate, but also other fees and charges are also included in this. So the customer can actually assess what is the actual cost. But some entities are not willing to disclose these norms, so they were restricted from further lending. For example, we have Ashirvad MFI from Chennai and Arohan MFI from Kolkata. So these entities were actually restricted. And also there is improper assessment. We have seen it is very difficult to assess the viability of the borrower, and in some cases they are giving loans which are beyond their income generation. So there is a rule that you cannot offer loan more than 50% of the monthly income, but they are giving loans which are more than this amount, which increases the risk of default. So that is because of improper assessment of the borrower. And then we have seen there is no transparency in the disclosure of APR, and some entities are also indulged in excessive interest rate. That defeats the very purpose of this scheme, because we want to help the low income groups. But if you charge excess interest rates, it becomes very difficult and leads to borrowers' distress. So we want to avoid that also. And another challenge is evergreening of loans. That is, some entities are involved in evergreening of the loans. That is, they are lending new loans just to help them repay the old loans, so that it cannot be categorized as NPA. So instead of naming it as a default one, they are actually continuing giving the loans so that it will not be categorized under NPA. So that is nothing but evergreening of loans. This is also one problem. However, we can see some improvement in the recent past because the regulatory bodies like RBI have actually heightened their monitoring mechanisms. They have made them more stringent, and also the banks got some experience because of the 10 years, okay? They are able to assess the risk in a better manner now than the past. So because of this, the NPAs have actually reduced, okay, under this Mudra Yojana. So for public sector banks, the NPAs have actually declined from 4.77% to 3.4% in the last 3 to 4 years, whereas for private sector banks, it has reduced from 1.77% to 0.95%. So these are the reasons. So the next article is about the shipping. The shipping industry may be actually granted infrastructure status. Okay, already we have granted the infrastructure status in 2016 to the shipyards, but now we want to extend it to some ships, okay, like coastal vessels and also some commercial vessels. So we want to extend infrastructure status to these. So government may announce this in the coming budget. So that's what the article says. This is relevant for your GS3 topic, infrastructure, and the subtopic blue economy. So granting infrastructure status to the ships have actually some benefits because it can revitalize the maritime sector and even help us become the top 5 shipbuilding nations by 2047. So India's container throughput, that is nothing but the amount of volume of container cargo handled by the country, is significantly high. We stand 7th position in this at a global level, but our shipbuilding industry, okay, the shipbuilding industry, we stand 22nd to 24th, and our share at a global level in the ships is very minuscule. It is just 0.06%, okay. So that's why we want to focus on the shipping industry and reduce our dependence on the foreign players and also save lot of forex if we focus this. So it also aligns with the India's goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-reliance and improve the global competitiveness of India. So why infrastructure status? Because infrastructure status industries or sectors will have access to easier and long-term financing, okay. So what is the scope of this? So infrastructure status is given to two major vessel, that is coastal vessel and also commercial vessel category. So coastal vessels are those ships that operate within the territorial waters or 12 nautical miles, which will be important for your domestic trading and connecting various ports. And also we have commercial ships. They will be handling the international and domestic freight, that is your cargo or container ships. There are also other types of vessels. It can be research vessel, it can be shipping vessel or navy's vessels. These are different categories of the vessels, but the infrastructure status is only for coastal and commercial vessels. So let us see the global top players in the container throughput. We have seen container throughput is nothing but the amount of volume of cargo handled by country's ports, that is nothing but the container throughput. So it will give an indication about the level of country's integration with the global trade, especially through maritime routes, that is shipping. So the top one is 32% China, okay. Highest container throughput is by China, and next we have US at 7.4%, and third one is Singapore 4.4% because it acts as a major transshipment hub, and India stands at 2.4%, okay. 2.4% of the global container throughput is in India. We stand at 7th position. So that means we have significant needs at a global level and we are engaging in lot of maritime trade, but our shipbuilding is unable to keep up with these demands. So let us go through the shipbuilding industries also. So the top again is China, and 51% of the global ships are in China. Then comes South Korea 28%, and Japan comes third with 15%, okay. Whereas India, we have seen it is just 0.06% and ranks 22 to 24th at a global level. So what are the benefits of infrastructure status to this? They can access, that is the shipbuilding industry can access low cost financing, especially for extended time periods, okay. And also external commercial borrowings, that is they can borrow at the global level and access the larger capital pools which is required for industries like this, because these are capital intensive, they need lot of money, okay. And the terms of financing are also easy because it has low interest rate and extended gestation period for repayment. So these are all the benefits, and they can also have some tax exemptions, okay, that is also one benefit. They can also be eligible for long-term financing from multiple institutions like insurance companies, pension funds, and also IIFCL, that is India Infrastructure Financing Corporation Limited. Then it will give a boost to the shipping industry. We have seen container throughput is 7th position, but in the shipbuilding we are at 22nd position. It will also reduce the $109 billion we spend annually for this. That is, we are depending on the foreign operators for this trading. So we can save that amount. So let us go through different shipyards in India, the major ones. Mazagon Dock, Cochin Shipyard, then we have Garden Ship Engineers, and some are private also like L&T, AVG and Bharati. Okay, so these are different shipyards. 3 of them are private and the remaining are public sector. So let us understand the challenges. Okay, so the shipping industry is highly capital intensive. It needs lot of amount to set up an industry. Okay, and also the labor productivity in India is low, especially in this industry. It is highly technical also. That means it needs advanced navigation skills or advanced technology incorporation. So all these are highly capital intensive and skill intensive, which India lacks comparatively. And also high material cost, that is some specific type of material is required for this. Another problem is bank guarantees, that is there are different kinds of bank guarantees needed to have the bank loans. But this is a major bottleneck because in the recent past we have seen some defaults by the major private players, that is your ABG and Bharati. So they have actually defaulted, because of which banks are too cautious and are not interested in lending any kind of guarantees like performance guarantee, refund guarantee, post construction guarantee. These are different types of bank guarantees which need to be availed if you want any loan. So we need a robust policy framework and also execution to overcome all these challenges. So let us look at specific recommendations to overcome the challenges. We need a dedicated fund so that it can give some long-term financing which is tailored to the industrial needs. So we need to develop a maritime development fund that can help us reduce the interest rates. We have seen it is 10%, but we want around 4 to 8%, that is global level. And also approve Sagarmala Development Corporation as NBFC so that it can offer some financial services also to the shipyards. Okay, that is it can offer some insurance or low interest portfolios or long term lending. So all these are different financial products which are tailored to the requirements of the shipping. We also need to have maritime clusters. So maritime clusters with integrated services. There are different sections of this shipbuilding, like one is shipbuilding, then there may be some repair services or any kind of ancillary services, material procurement. All this can be integrated in one platform with these clusters. So this can scale up the operations and reduce the cost incurred by each player. So that is the advantage of integrated maritime clusters. We also need to invest in the greener fuels compared to the current heavy fuel oil or marine fuel oil. These have high sulfur content, okay, that leads to lot of pollution. So we need to invest in R&D to produce some greener alternatives like hydrogen and ammonia as a fuel. So we need to invest there also. And we can introduce some tax breaks and also customs savings, exemptions in some critical ship components imports. Okay, we need different components of the ships like propulsion systems, okay, propulsion, advanced navigation, even some high quality steel plates. All these are imported right now. So we can have some kind of tax exemptions and custom duty exemptions for these critical components. We can also classify the assets, that is ships, as eligible assets under Surface Sea Act, because this will help in acting as a collateral, okay, and in case of default the banks can actually acquire these assets. And a part of defense contracts may be actually leveraged by the private also, that is they should also be partnered in these defense contracts, because defense has a huge infrastructure setup. The shipbuilding in defense is well developed and the private commercial shipbuilders can actually learn from this experience and develop on their own. So we can improve the private capabilities if we give some part of defense contracts to the private. So all these recommendations need to be implemented collaboratively by multiple stakeholders like government, private and also financial entities. So that's how we can overcome the challenges. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Abhiram IAS Academy.